Video contains violent content, details that are not suitable for common perception. Please consider before watching. Chapter 140, Annihilating Poison King 1. The Shadow Clan master gently placed his hand on Mok Jaeongun's shoulder and spoke with a benevolent smile. We are now in the same boat. I will keep that in mind. I will contribute to the revival of the faith. The Shadow Clan master nodded with a satisfied expression, then crossed his hands, brought them to his shoulders, slightly bowed his head and spoke in a reverent voice. May the Holy Fire's blessing be upon you. Mok Jaeongun followed suit. May the Holy Fire's blessing be upon you. Oh ho ho. Then get some good rest. Yes. With that, the Shadow Clan master left the private residence. The Shadow Clan master's attitude, which had been as if he would kill Mok Jaeongun at any moment until just now, had changed to be quite favorable. It was because he was convinced that Mok Jaeongun, who could write and read the original scripture in Persian, was a follower of the Baiwa faith that worshipped fire. After the Shadow Clan master's presence had completely disappeared, Chong Ryong's voice reached Mok Jaeongun's ears. You really have a knack for using your head. With a single lie, Mok Jaeongun had led the situation as he intended. He had made it seem as if they were on the same side and made the Shadow Clan master interested in the person he was searching for, the Ghost Blade. Mok Jaeongun chuckled and replied, the more hands helping the better. Helping hands? It must mean there are more useful pieces to take advantage of. Chong Ryong clicked her tongue and said, that's true, but it's best to be careful. Careful? Of the Shadow Clan master? Yes. Those who worship fire are not called heretics and persecuted for no reason. That's interesting. What is? It's surprising that someone who claims to dislike black and white logic is so passionate about a religion that came from the western regions. At Mok Jaeongun's words, Chong Ryong was at a loss for words. It was difficult to refute a statement that pierced right through the heart of the matter. She had expressed her hatred for the black and white logic between the righteous and evil factions with her own mouth, but when faced with a believer of the Baiwa faith, which was called a heresy and persecuted, didn't she treat them with prejudice? She spoke in a slightly lowered voice. You're right. This is also a kind of prejudice. Mok Jaeongun smiled at her, readily admitting it. He liked this aspect of her. Of course, her words didn't end there. But I have experienced that era. They also treat those outside their own religious group as heretics. If you know that, it's best to be cautious. I'll keep that in mind. Anyway, even if you've made the Shadow Clan master move, there's not much difference in having to move with your own feet. That's true. Mok Jaeongun had set up the situation as if the clue to the incarnation of Armin might be connected to the Ghost Blade, one of the 8 stars and possibly the enemy who killed his grandfather. So he thought the Shadow Clan master might tell him something he knew about the Ghost Blade, but surprisingly he also knew nothing. It's quite troublesome that the Ghost Blade might be the clue. Do you know something about the Ghost Blade? Yes. At Mok Jaeongun's question, the Shadow Clan master shook his head. As the head of the Shadow Clan in charge of information in the Heaven and Earth Society, he thought he might know something. But the unexpected answer drained his energy. I've heard rumors that the Ghost Blade might be a master of the Heaven and Earth Society. You mean the rumor that the Ghost Blade might be the society leader's personal bodyguard? Yes. A kid who hasn't been in the organization for long has heard all sorts of rumors. Yes, there was such a rumor at one point. Is it just a rumor? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Rumors can have various tendencies. They can be completely false or they can circulate because they are close to the truth. Which side do you think it is, Master? I can't give a definite answer. Why? Only the society leader himself knows the identity of his personal bodyguard. I've heard that even the vice leader, known as the society leader's right-hand man, doesn't know. At the Shadow Clan master's words, Mok Jaeongun thought it seemed fishy. Rumors didn't spread for no reason. However, at this point, even if he was suspicious, it was difficult to directly contact the Ghost Blade. He had considered using Chong Ryong and the spirit servants, but since the spiritual perception of masters above the peak was incomparable to those below, it was difficult to make them move recklessly. Moreover, he had heard that Cho Tae-chong, who might surpass even the primal killing pavilion's diviner in COK with his techniques, was guarding the main hall where the society leader resided. In many ways he still lacked strength. However, Mok Jaeongun, who couldn't just wait while building his strength, carefully said to the Shadow Clan master. I heard that Elder Bek Saha, the Annihilating Poison King, had confronted the Ghost Blade. I know he's the only one who survived after fighting him. Wouldn't he know something? He probably would. Then how about trying to contact Elder Bek Saha? That would be difficult. Pardon? Why was it difficult? As Mok Jung-un was puzzled, the Shadow Clan master clicked his tongue and said, The Annihilating Poison King is currently in seclusion, observing a 3-year mourning period for his deceased mother. Unless it's a special case, he's not meeting anyone. The 3-year mourning period is observed for 3 years after a parent's death to fulfill one's duty and filial piety towards them. After the burial, the ancestral tablet is enshrined in the mourning hall, and the mourner resides in a hut, offering ritual meals to the deceased morning and evening. Sometimes during the 3-year mourning period, especially in the early stages, no guests are received except for blood relatives. The Bek family, the Annihilating Poison King's household, was like that. This is unexpected. If the Shadow Clan master moved, wouldn't it be easier to obtain information? But with this it became difficult. Mok Jung-un said as if he had no choice. Then how about I go? You? Yes. I happen to have 3 first-place tokens, so I can ask the executives for guidance. You're going to use that for this? Yes. At Mok Jung-un's words, the Shadow Clan master couldn't hide his bewilderment. It was an opportunity to receive guidance from 2 of the 8 stars, known as the Supreme Masters of the Era, among the 5 kings. Why would he give up that opportunity and ask for guidance from the Annihilating Poison King, who, in a sense, practiced a unique poison art different from ordinary martial arts? Isn't that too much of a waste? Of course it could be, but I also want to do something for our faith. Please let me lend a hand. At Mok Jung-un's words, the Shadow Clan master couldn't hide his satisfaction. What believer wouldn't be happy to hear that he would fulfill his duty as a follower of the Beiwa faith? If you're willing to do that, there's nothing more I could ask for. Then since we're already at it, tomorrow might be a good day. Tomorrow? Yes. It seems that Bek Saha's grandson is having his first birthday tomorrow. First birthday? Even if he's in the middle of a 3-year mourning period, he won't just overlook his grandson's first birthday, who will carry on the family line. They'll have a simple feast, even if it's just with close relatives. Since it was his grandson's first birthday, his mood would be better than usual. The Shadow Clan master suggested taking advantage of this. I was planning to send a gift to the Annihilating Poison King anyway. If you deliver it and carefully request the benefit of the 3 first-place tokens, it should work out. Early in the morning before the sun had risen, Creek. Jang Nung-ik, the second disciple of the society leader, hurriedly came to the residence of his blind subordinate, Wai Mengqion, after receiving an urgent message. Jang Nung-ik, who had come to the residence, couldn't contain his anger and gnashed his teeth. Wai Mengqion's head, decapitated and dead. What kind of sudden calamity was this? Grab. Jang Nung-ik grabbed the collar of Jong-im, Wai Mengqion's subordinate, and pressed him. What the hell were you doing for this to happen? I apologize. Jong-im couldn't say anything and only uttered an apology. At his response, Jang Nung-ik threw Jong-im to the floor. Bang. Ugh. Jang Nung-i, who had thrown him to the floor, glared at the guard warriors prostrating as if confessing their sins with sharp eyes. Then he soon spoke. What kind of guards are you who can't even protect your own master? Behead them all. Yes. Swish. At Jang Nung-ik's order, Ho Jong-hyuk, the third-ranked member of the Five Mountains Alliance and the Grand Clan leader of the Destruction Clan, raised the huge axe he was carrying on his shoulder. The 4 guards, frightened, pleaded with tears in their eyes. Please spare us. We were also suddenly attacked. At their pleas, Jang Nung-ik snorted. They all claimed to have fallen asleep at that moment and knew nothing, yet now they were begging to be spared. Kill them. Slice. Ugh. Despite their desperate pleas, they all ended up with their heads cut off by Ho Jong-hyuk's axe. Still not appeased, Jang Nung-ik, the second disciple of the society leader, considered killing even Jong-im, who was known as Wai Mengqion's right-hand man. However, the other subordinates dissuaded him. Please hold back. If you do that, there will be no one to lead Mengqion's subordinates. There were about 50 elite warriors personally trained by Wai Mengqion. If Jong-im, a lieutenant-level subordinate who had been managing them, was also killed, their morale might decline, and it could become difficult to control them. Knowing this, Jang Nung-ak also barely restrained himself. However, this was not something that could be overlooked. How dare they kill this young master's subordinate? What an absurd bastard. He had carried out this audacious act not elsewhere but within the inner city of the Heaven and Earth Society. Touching his person, who might become the next society leader, was essentially equivalent to declaring war. Swish. At that moment, someone touched the cut surface of Y Mengchion's severed neck and spoke. He's no ordinary person. What? He cut Mengchion's sword and neck with a single slash. A man with an angular jaw and a fierce-looking face pointed to Y Mengchion's broken bamboo sword on the floor. Although it was impossible to know exactly how the duel unfolded since the cunning bastard had erased all the footprints on the floor, one thing could be inferred from the broken sword and the cut surface of the neck. Jang Nung-ak's eyes sharpened. He cut Mengchion's sword and neck with a single slash? To do that, one had to be a tremendous master of the sword and have reached the perfected realm of the supreme stage. A woman in colorful clothes with thick lips approached and said, "Then the suspects are narrowed down to some extent." Y Mengchion was a subordinate of Jang Nung-ak, the second disciple of the society leader. If someone was bold enough to kill Y Mengchion in the middle of the night, it would be the work of those who wanted to hold him back from becoming the next society leader. Na Yolriang. Y Soyun. The first people that came to mind were naturally his older and younger martial brother and sister competing for the position of the next society leader. They were also supreme masters of the sword, so this kind of thing was possible. Moreover, they were in a situation where they were fiercely competing for power with him, so they had sufficient justification to carry out such an act. However, it was unlikely that they had personally come out like rats just to deal with one of his subordinates. In that case, the number of suspects was significantly reduced. The two wenches that Grand Young Master Na Yolriang boasted about and that bastard who was Y Soyun's right-hand man. Except for them, no one could have possibly cut Y Mengchion's sword and neck with a single slash. Creak. Find them. No matter what. Yes, sir. At his words, the remaining 4 members of the Five Mountains Alliance bowed their heads and shouted in unison. Amidst this, there was one person watching with frustrated eyes. It was none other than Zhang Y Mengchion's subordinate. Damn it. They're not even considering me as a suspect. Zhang knew the true culprit behind this incident. Of course he would. Because he was the one who had moved together with Y Mengchion on his orders. However, apart from that, he couldn't reveal this fact. The reason was that he himself was not Zhang, but Y Mengchion, who had become a spirit servant and possessed the body of his subordinate. My lord, I apologize. He could no longer serve Jang Nung-a. Since he had become a spirit servant, he couldn't defy Mok Jiongun, and if he did, his wife and child would lose their lives. At that moment, Jang Nung-a, who had been gnashing his teeth, muttered while glaring at somewhere. No. This is perfect timing. I can see those damn things there. There. Where was Jang Nung-ak referring to when he said, there? Around noon. Mok Jiongun was heading somewhere, accompanied by his guard warrior, Suk Yong. That place was none other than the estate of Baek Saha, the Annihilating Poison King, one of the 5 kings of the Heaven and Earth Society. Damn it. Suk Yong, who was in charge of guarding Mok Jiongun, found this situation quite awkward. He had tried to avoid encountering him as much as possible, but he had no choice but to deliver the gift from the Shadow Clan master. He had no choice but to cater to him as much as possible. Mok Jiongun smiled and said to him, who was very tense, "Is your lover doing well?" Flinch. When Mok Jiongun asked about his lover under the pretext of a greeting, Suk Yong felt shivers all over his body. Mok Jiongun's words sounded more like a warning after a long time rather than a greeting. Suk Yong spoke in a trembling voice. I will never act in a way that harms you, young master. What did I say? Damn it. Then he should have just asked if he was doing well instead of asking about his lover. Suk Yong felt an urge to retort, but he didn't show it. Mok Jiongun was too frightening for him to do that. Is that large case on your back the gift prepared by master? Yes, it is. The gift should be to his liking. I believe he put a lot of thought into it. That's a relief then. Well, the gift wasn't the essential thing. He had to somehow persuade Baek Saha, the Annihilating Poison King, to obtain information about the Ghost Blade, one of the 8 stars, from his mouth. However, the timing was really bad. Of all things, he was observing a 3-year mourning period. Persuade him. For now he had received and familiarized himself with the information about Bek Saha and his family from the Shadow Clan master. But it seemed that Bek Saha was a person with a more difficult personality than he had thought. So persuading him didn't seem like it would be easy. At that moment, Suk Yong, who was walking ahead, pointed somewhere with his chin and said, "It's over there." A grand estate was visible where he pointed. In terms of size, it was smaller than the Shadow Clan, which handled confidential information, but it was quite large, befitting one of the 5 kings, who could be considered high-ranking executives. "Shall we go then?" Mok Jiongun approached the entrance of the estate with him. 2 warriors wearing mourning clothes were guarding the front gate. However, before they could reach there, Mok Jiongun turned his head and saw a group of people approaching. Leading the group was a woman wearing a bamboo hat and a veil, and she was none other than Wai So-yun. She was Wai So-yun, the 3rd disciple of the society leader. Why was Wai So-yun coming here? As he was thinking that, he saw another group of people coming from a different path. They were none other than, oh, goodness, Jang Nung, aka the 2nd disciple of the society leader, and his subordinates from the 5 Mountains Alliance. No, the 4 Mountains Alliance now were coming here together. Chapter 141, Annihilating Poison King 2. Thanks to the Annihilating Poison King Bek Saha, observing a 3-year mourning period, no one had succeeded in making contact with him. The same was true for Wai So-yun, the 3rd disciple of the society leader. Even if she had the qualifications to be the next society leader, her authority didn't reach that of the 5 kings, who could be considered high-ranking executives of the Heaven and Earth Society. Thus, without a proper justification, she hadn't had the opportunity to contact the Annihilating Poison King. However, she finally had a chance to meet him. It was none other than the 1st birthday celebration of Bek Saha's grandson, Beko-chan. If I miss this opportunity, it will be difficult until the 3-year mourning period ends. Among the high-ranking 5 kings, only Bright Blade King Sun Yun supported her. If she gained the support of the Annihilating Poison King Bek Saha here, she would secure a supporting force that could rival Jang Nung, aka the 2nd disciple, to some extent. However, young lady. A man in his mid-30s with a stylishly grown beard gestured with his chin. As she turned her head, she saw a group walking from the southwestern path. That group was none other than Jang Nung, aka the 2nd disciple, and his subordinates. The 5 Mountains Alliance. Enduring Tyrant Fist, the Grand Clan leader of the Hegemon Fist group and the 1st-ranked member. Wai Mengqion, the Blind Swordsman and the 2nd-ranked member. Ho Jong Hyok, the Grand Clan leader of the Destruction Clan and the 3rd-ranked member. Seo Hyen, the leader of the Grass Smoke group and the 4th-ranked member. Geo Mopal, the 5th-ranked member and practitioner of the Geoam Fist. They were all young masters of the later generation with high reputations within the Heaven and Earth Society. Among them, the one considered the best was undoubtedly Enduring Tyrant Fist, the 1st-ranked member. He was one of the 5 tigers, called the best masters of the later generation in the Heaven and Earth Society, and his father was Ko Yun Bayok, one of the 3 society guardians and the guardian who oversaw all of the Heaven and Earth Society's defenses. He brought all his subordinates. No, only 4 of them. The 2nd-ranked member Wai Mengqion was not present. Despite being blind, he was famous for his tremendous swordsmanship. Anyway, judging by the fact that he had brought his subordinates, their purpose seemed to be the same. The Annihilating Poison King. It was to bring Bek Saha to their side. However, she frowned with strong hostility. Why is he doing that? The reason was that Jang Nung AK was glaring at her and Wu Horang, who was standing to her right, with eyes filled with murderous intent. She didn't know, but Jang Nung-a had a reason for doing so. Could it be him? The man in his mid-30s with a short beard who Jang Nung-a was glaring at. He was Wu Horang, the chief disciple of Bright Blade King Sun Yun, one of the 5 kings, and the Grand Clan leader of the Residence Destruction Group. He was Wai So-yun's subordinate and one of the 5 tigers, the supreme masters of the later generation in the Heaven and Earth Society. He had reached the supreme stage in his mid-20s. And it was no exaggeration to say that his martial prowess had already reached the executive level. Yang Il, the junior leader of the Transient Sword Group, and Gio Kirayan, the eldest daughter of Gi He, the Valley Master of Sun Rock, who followed behind him, were also quite skilled as high-ranking masters of the later generation. However, in Zhang Nungake's eyes, only Wu Horang stood out. If you are the one who killed Meng Qion, this young master will also cut off your head and soak that wench Wai Soyun's bed with your blood. Sensing this strong murderous intent and hostility, Wu Horang also became more vigilant. As his hand unconsciously reached for his sword handle. Maintain your composure. Ah. At Wai Soyun's low warning, he lowered his hand again. If he fell for the provocation and caused a commotion here, it would disrupt their plan. He wasn't the only one thinking this. My lord, please calm down for now. We can't confirm the culprit yet, and if we create a disturbance here, it will be disrespectful to the annihilating Poison King. Understood. At the advice of Ko Yunhu, the first-ranked member Zhang Nungake, the second disciple of the society leader, nodded his head. No matter how agitated he wasn't lacking in judgment to that extent. As they were approaching, someone caught Zhang Nungake's attention. Oh, Mok Jiangyun. It was none other than Mok Jiangyun. Similarly, Wai Soyun, who had been too focused on being wary of Zhang Nungake, also noticed Mok Jiangyun at the entrance of the annihilating Poison King's estate. Mok Jiangyun? Why was he here? He hadn't even joined anyone's faction yet. As she was puzzled, Zhang Nungake waved his hand with a smile towards Mok Jiangyun. Are you doing well? Seeing him act friendly as if they were close, Wai Soyun frowned. What? She clearly remembered that things didn't go well between them, so why was her martial brother acting so favorably as if they were close friends? Could it be that he had tried to win him over again in the meantime? Feeling a slight unease, she quickly acknowledged Mok Jiangyun. It's been a while. Have you been well? It's been a while. At Wai Soyun's greeting, it was Zhang Nungake's turn to furrow his brows. What was she saying now? Could it be that this wench had made contact with the kid he had his eyes on? How dare she covet what was his? With such thoughts, Zhang Nungake's anger was about to rise again. At that moment, Mok Jiangyun bowed his head with a polite gesture and greeted them. Mok Jiangyun, a disciple of the Shadow Clan master, greets young master Zhang Nungake and young lady Wai Soyun. Yes. All right. At his greeting, the second disciple Zhang Nungake and the third disciple Wai Soyun unintentionally found themselves looking at each other as they responded simultaneously. Wai Soyun clasped her hands together, slightly bowed her head and greeted politely. Greetings to my martial brother. You look quite lively. Unlike Wai Soyun, who had greeted respectfully as she had to uphold the etiquette towards her senior despite their mutual wariness, Zhang Nungake openly acted coldly. She was already used to this attitude of his, so she didn't particularly mind. The same goes for you, senior brother. What? Zhang Nungake's voice rose slightly, as he was already suspicious of her due to the incident of Wai Mengqion's death. Concerned about this, Ko Yunhu once again quietly dissuaded him. My lord, this is not the place. Creak. At those words, Zhang Nungake gnashed his teeth and shook his head. It was difficult for him to calm his anger easily since the incident had occurred just a few hours ago. However, for the sake of their grand endeavor, he had to endure it for now. Zhang Nungake turned his head away from Wai Soyun as if he couldn't stand the sight of her and said to Mok Jiangyun, You have a lot to do to gain trust, so what brings you here? At that question, Wai Soyun also looked at Mok Jiangyun. He was also curious about that. Mok Jiangyun pointed to the large wooden case that the guard warrior Sukyung was carrying on his back and replied, As you can see, I came here on the Shadow Clan Master's orders to deliver a birthday gift and pay my respects to Elder Baek Saha, the annihilating Poison King. Oh, is that so? You had the same business as this young master. Ah, yes, it seems so. But you haven't made any other acquaintances in the meantime, right? Zhang Nungake blatantly glared at Wai Soyun once and asked Mok Jiangyun. It was as if he was asking if he had contacted other potential successors instead of him. Mok Jiangyun smiled and replied, How could that be possible? At those words, Wai Soyun frowned her pretty brows. Could it be that Mok Jiangyun's heart had turned towards Zhang Nungake instead of her? If that was the case, it would be quite troublesome. The Shadow Clan, which controlled information, was also very important. At that moment, Zhang Nungake looked at Wai Soyun with a triumphant expression as if he had won and said, Yes, that's how it should be. I have high expectations for you. Grip. Wai Soyun clenched her hand tightly. Normally she wouldn't fall for such childish provocations or mind games. However, it was hard for her to tolerate her opponent, who was also vying for the position of society leader, trying to snatch away what she was aiming for in this manner. So she said, "Mok Jaeongyeon. Yes, young lady. You're keeping the token I gave you safe, right?" She revealed what she originally had no intention of disclosing. At those words, Jang Nung-ak's expression, which had been triumphant until just now, instantly turned fierce. What was she talking about, a token? Token? He wasn't the only one reacting to those words. Wu Horang, known as Wai Soyun's right-hand man and the grand disciple of Bright Blade King Sun Yun, also frowned and looked at Mok Jaeongyeon. He had thought that he was the only one who had received a token from her. But this kid who looked like a male courtesan had received a token from the young lady? Yes, I'm keeping it safe. This bastard. At Mok Jaeongyeon's answer, Jang Nung-ak's mood soured. Just now he had responded as if he hadn't gotten close to other potential successors, but he had received a token from that damn wench? This was not something he could overlook. You. As Jang Nung-ak was about to express his displeasure towards Mok Jaeongyeon. My lord, shouldn't we first participate in the celebration and offer congratulations to Elder Baek Saha, the annihilating poison king? At the words of Ho Jong-hyuk, the grand clan leader of the Destruction Clan and the third-ranked member, Jang Nung-ak closed his mouth. Yes, this wasn't the time to do this here. First he had to meet with the annihilating poison king and settle the matter, and it wouldn't be too late to do it afterward. If he missed today, the opportunity would slip away for a while. Let's talk in a bit. At his words, Mok Jaeongyeon made a small bow. Then Jang Nung-ak abruptly turned his head and went ahead to the entrance of the estate. Seeing his behavior, Mok Jaeongyeon smiled nonchalantly. Then it was Wai Soyun's turn to speak. Didn't you say you dislike conflicts? Yes, that's right. But it seems like your stance has changed a bit from back then. How could that be? My thoughts remain unchanged. Really? Yes. Wai Soyun stared at Mok Jaeongyeon intently, then shook her head and said, "All right, I'll believe your words. But my second martial brother is different. I didn't just let you go back then to yield to him." At her words, Wu Horang, the grand disciple of Bright Blade King Sun Yun, frowned. Her words, openly coveting Mok Jaeongyeon, were grating to him. However, unlike his junior martial sister Yi Buixian, he had some experience and composure, so he didn't reveal his emotions. "I have other urgent matters to attend to now, so let's talk later." With those words, she also hurriedly entered the entrance of the estate. If she didn't hurry, her second martial brother Jang Nung-ak would take the lead. As they went in first, the guard warrior Suk-yong, who had been extremely tense, staggered as his legs went weak. Tap. Mok Jaeongyeon grabbed his arm. "Ah, be careful. It's a precious gift." "And my apologies." Suk-yong clicked his tongue inwardly. It hadn't been long since Mok Jaeongyeon became a disciple of the Shadow Clan master, but he didn't expect two potential successors of the society leader to covet him and engage in a battle of nerves with each other. The person involved was unfazed, but he himself was trembling. Is he really not affected? Receiving attention from those two people was quite burdensome. If either of them turned against him, troublesome things were bound to happen. At that moment, Mok Jaeongyeon said, "Shall we go in too?" Understood. I don't know. What could people like him who were mere subordinates do anyway? It was more comfortable to just do as he was told. As they were about to enter the entrance of the estate at that very moment, halt! The warriors guarding the entrance crossed their sword sheaths and blocked the way. The atmosphere was quite different from when they had let Jang Nung-ak's group and Wai Soyun's group pass through. "What business brings you here?" "Ah, I am Mok Jaeongyeon, a disciple of the Shadow Clan master. As you can see, I have come on my master's orders to deliver a gift to celebrate the joyous occasion of the Baek family." At Mok Jaeongyeon's words, one of the warriors clasped his hands and said to Mok Jaeongyeon, "So you are a disciple of the Shadow Clan master?" "Yes. I apologize, but you can leave the gift here." The warrior pointed to a piece of paper on a table inside the entrance and continued, "Write the names of the Shadow Clan master and his disciple in this visitor's log and leave." "Pardon?" Mok Jaeongyeon tilted his head. Did this mean he should just leave the gift here and go? Mok Jaeongyeon scratched his head as if it was troublesome and said, "It's a bit difficult to just leave the gift and go. Although today is a joyous occasion for the Baek family, they are still in the middle of a 3-year mourning period. The Annihilating Poison King has given orders to seek understanding from most guests, except for relatives and a few others. It seemed that those few others included the society leader's disciples. They were being blocked right from the entrance. Ah, is that so? So please just turn back. I'm sorry, but it's difficult for me to just turn back as well. Oh my. Are you taking the Annihilating Poison King's words lightly? The warrior raised his voice and spoke in a warning tone. Mok Jiongun shrugged and said, "How could that be? Then let me visit with a different status." What? A different status? Tap. At that moment Mok Jiongun took something out from his bosom and placed it on the table. Seeing this, the warrior's eyes widened. It was the 3 first-place tokens he had received from the corpse Blood Valley. It was only natural to be surprised to see him possess 3 first-place tokens, which were difficult to obtain even one. Mok Jiongun smiled at the speechless warrior and said, "I intend to seek guidance from Elder Bek Saha, the Annihilating Poison King. Can you refuse this as well?" Chapter 142, Annihilating Poison King 3. Inside the estate of Bek Saha, one of the 5 kings and the Annihilating Poison King. This place, also known as the Bek family's estate, was bustling with relatives gathered for the first birthday celebration. Even though no outside guests were received, there were at least several dozen people just from the relatives. In the garden, maids were preparing food in a temporary outdoor kitchen for the celebration, and relatives were sitting at tables, raising their glasses to celebrate the first birthday. In the midst of the ongoing celebration, Bek Saha's wife, Madame Jiang, rose from her seat and headed somewhere upon receiving an urgent message. As she walked, Madame Jiang clicked her tongue and said, "They've come after all." Yes. Since he's in the middle of a 3-year mourning period, today was the only proper justification for them to visit. The man who appeared to be in his early 30s with sharp eyes, answering her words, was Bek Sogang, the second son of the Annihilating Poison King Bek Saha and the one in charge of external affairs. The reason they were hastily changing locations was due to sudden guests. "You said it was the second young master and the third young lady?" "Yes. They each brought their subordinates." "Sigh. It seems they've made up their minds. What can we do?" "They came because they want father's support." "That's probably the case." The current Heaven and Earth Society was facing an increasingly fierce succession dispute. Due to rumors that the society leader's illness had worsened, the potential successor's movements had become more agile. Amidst this, the family head, the Annihilating Poison King Bek Saha, had not supported any of the society leader's disciples. Thus, they would try to get a definite answer from him today no matter what. It's truly troublesome. You're right. But wasn't this a problem that would eventually come? Even so, don't you know your father's temperament? Well, sigh. Bek Sogang, the second son and the outer master, let out a sigh. As his mother said, his father would never take back a word he had uttered. So he was worried. He was concerned that an unnecessary commotion might occur. Did you separate the rooms? At Madame Jiang's question, the second son Bek Sogang nodded. There was no other choice, as it was impossible to know what would happen if the 2 potential successors were placed in the same reception room. Then she said, "Combine them into one room when they arrive." "Pardon? But if we do that? If we keep them separate, it will be harder to refuse." "Ah. It's better to show them that we're not choosing anyone when they're together, so they'll quietly back down." "Your words are wise, mother." The second son Bek Sogang also nodded in agreement as if he understood. It was at that very moment when they were about to pass through the pavilion housing the reception room. "Please wait a moment." At that moment, someone hurriedly ran towards them. He was none other than one of the warriors guarding the entrance of the estate. "Madam?" Madame Jiang asked with a puzzled expression. "What's the matter?" "Well, another guest has just arrived." "A guest? Didn't I tell you to seek understanding and send them back if they're not relatives or prearranged visitors?" "Yes, that's true, but why had they come here when instructions had been given in advance?" She shook her head and said, "Then send them back. Please take a look at this." With those words, the warrior guarding the estate entrance took something out of his bosom. It was none other than... No way. Is that? The first-place tokens from the corpse Blood Valley entrance. Not just 1 but 3 first-place tokens. Knowing what this meant, Madame Jiang's brows furrowed. The second disciple of the society leader, Jang Nung-ak, and the third disciple Wai So-yun, gathered in a single reception room. And behind them their respective subordinates were seated. Sigh. Jang Nung-ak let out a sigh as if he was annoyed. Since he had entered the estate first, he thought he would naturally be able to meet the annihilating poison king Baek Saha faster than Wai So-yun. However, they made him wait in the reception room, and now they were calling them to the same room. As a result, his mood had become quite unpleasant. I don't know if I should say it's fortunate or not. Wai So-yun was also uncomfortable. Fortunately, she was able to avoid the situation where her second martial brother met with the annihilating poison king first. But if they faced each other like this, persuasion might become difficult. It was because they might have to keep each other in check, and if they blatantly disparaged each other, it could turn into a full-blown confrontation. Creak. At that moment, the door opened, and a middle-aged woman in her late 50s with graying hair appeared in the reception room, where the atmosphere had become even heavier. Seeing the dignified woman, the second disciple Jang Nung-ak and the third disciple Wai So-yun simultaneously stood up and greeted her with clasped hands and bowed heads. Greetings to the Baek families, madam. It's been a while, madam. Since they were disciples of the society leader, they were already acquainted with her. Wai So-yun also took off her bamboo hat and white veil out of respect for Madame Jang, the wife of the annihilating poison king and the grand matriarch of the Baek family. She took the lead first. Congratulations on your grandson's first birthday. This wench. Jang Nung-yi slightly frowned but soon forced a smile and said, It's truly a joyous occasion. Ah. At the congratulations from these two, Madame Jang clicked her tongue inwardly. She couldn't understand how they engaged in such subtle mind games while offering congratulations. It was too obvious that they were conscious of each other. Of course, she understood since they were in a competitive relationship. Swish. Thank you. I'm deeply grateful that you, the two disciples of the society leader, have come to this humble place to celebrate my grandson's well-being. It's something we should congratulate, of course. But the annihilating poison king and the young family head? Jang Nung-ak carefully asked, glancing at Baek So-gang, the outer master and second son, standing next to her. Of course, Madame Jang, as the grand matriarch, could also be considered an elder of this household. But how could the true protagonists of the first birthday celebration, the young family head, not even show up when the potential successors who might become the future society leaders had come? Baek So-gang answered this question. I apologize. Since it's in the middle of the first birthday celebration and my older brother has to attend to the relatives, he couldn't spare a moment to come. Ah, is that so? Yes. Please understand. There's no need to seek understanding or anything. It's only natural to be busy when we've come during the celebration. Wai So-yun spoke softly with a smile. Jang Nung-ak also didn't want to lose. You don't need to mind. I'm not someone who lacks that much courtesy. Ho ho ho. It was a truly amusing sight. Jang Nung-ak's arrogant attitude was quite well known within the Heaven and Earth Society, but seeing him try to cater like this was enough to make one feel astonished. That's how much he needs father's support. At that moment, Jang Nung-yi pointed to the gift box he had placed beside him and said, Since we've come all this way, I'd like to pay my respects to Elder Baek Saha, even if it's just a formality. Seeing Jang Nung-ak take the initiative, Wai So-yun also chimed in as if agreeing. It seems we had the same thought, martial brother. I also wanted to directly meet Elder Baek Saha, offer congratulations and have a conversation about this and that. At her words, Jang Nung-ak let out a soft sigh. He didn't like how she was trying to get involved in any way. It seemed she was trying to interfere with his business, but did she think he would easily let it slide? Swish. Jang Nung-ak fanned himself with a folding fan and said, There's no need for Marshall's sister to be here. I'll meet Elder Baek Saha as a representative so you can just leave. How can I do that? It's an opportunity to meet someone who is like an uncle after a long time, so leaving without even seeing his face would be disrespectful. Why would it be considered disrespectful? I'll convey the message well, so don't worry. No, it's all right. Wai So-yun flatly refused. Jang Nung-ak glared at her fiercely. Seeing the two potential successors now openly expressing hostility towards each other, Madame Jang clicked her tongue inwardly. The situation we were concerned about might unfold. Feeling that it couldn't be helped, Madame Jang finally tried to intervene. You too. At that moment, a voice was heard from outside the reception room. "Madam, the disciple of the Shadow Clan Master has arrived." Hearing this, Jang Nung-ak and Wai Soyun simultaneously frowned. What was this about? How did the kid entered? The two of them naturally thought that Mok Jae-eun would have just delivered the gift and left. But they had no idea how he had entered the estate. Then Madame Jang clasped her hands together, slightly bowed her head towards the two of them and opened her mouth. "I apologize, but would it be all right to call the disciple of the Shadow Clan Master here for a moment as well?" "No, why the disciple of the Shadow Clan Master? I think I need to seek the same understanding from both of you and the disciple of the Shadow Clan Master." "The same understanding?" At Madame Jang's words, Jang Nung-ak and Wai Soyun couldn't hide their bewilderment. What was she trying to say? However, they were in a position where it was difficult to refuse her request, as they wanted to make a good impression on her. "All right. I don't mind either." Soon the door opened and Mok Jae-eun appeared. Mok Jae-eun clasped his hands together, bowed his head and greeted everyone. "I am Mok Jae-eun, a disciple of the Shadow Clan Master." He's not just ordinarily good-looking. Madame Jang couldn't help but admire Mok Jae-eun's face inwardly. She had never seen a man's face that gave off a beautiful impression rather than a handsome one. But that was only for a moment and... "So you are the disciple of the Shadow Clan Master." "I am the wife of Elder Baek Saha." "Ah, so you are the madam." Mok Jae-eun lightly clasped his hands together and bowed again. Then she was about to introduce Jang Nung-ak and Wai Soyun, but Jang Nung-ak waved his hand and said, "We already exchanged greetings outside, madam." "Ah, is that so?" "Yes, I have greeted the two of them." At Mok Jae-eun's answer, Madame Jang pointed to an empty chair and said, "Then have a seat." "Yes, thank you." Mok Jae-eun went there, glanced at everyone once and sat down. Wai Soyun was sitting next to him and... "How did you get in?" she whispered to Mok Jae-eun in a low voice. At her question, Mok Jae-eun smiled and replied, "I have some business to take care of." "That's not what I'm asking right now." Before Wai Soyun could finish her sentence, Madame Jang clasped her hands together, slightly bowed her head towards all the guests and spoke. "I'm afraid I have to seek your understanding even though you have all gathered here. As you know, my husband is currently observing a 3-year mourning period. That's why we are all wearing mourning clothes." Of course, no one was unaware of this. She continued, "I'm grateful that you have come, but I don't think my husband will be able to meet anyone at the moment." "What do you mean by that?" Jang Nung-ik asked with narrowed eyes. At his question, Madame Jang replied, "It's exactly as I said. My husband is currently living in isolation from the outside world. So I have no choice but to seek your understanding." "But aren't you holding a first birthday celebration right now?" He didn't even attend the first birthday celebration. At Madame Jang's words, both Jang Nung-ak and Wai Soyun fell silent. They had come to take advantage of this opportunity, but who would have expected to hear that they couldn't even meet him after entering the household? No matter how much authority one of the 5 kings had, it was hard to understand how he could send them away without even showing his face when potential successors competing for the position of the next society leader had visited. Both of them were displeased due to the unexpected variable and couldn't readily agree. Then Madame Jang said to Mok Jae-eun, "Likewise, the disciple of the Shadow Clan Master should also just withdraw this time." "I'm afraid that would be difficult." Before she could finish her sentence, a rejection was expressed. At Mok Jae-eun's words, Madame Jang frowned and looked at him. She was earnestly seeking their understanding, so what kind of manner of speech was this? "I clearly said I was seeking your understanding." "I apologize, but as far as I know, the benefit of 3 first-place tokens is established by the sex rules, so no one can refuse it." At those words, Madame Jang bit her lower lip. Mok Jae-eun's words were accurate. Anyone who possessed 3 first-place tokens from the Corpse Blood Valley entrance could seek guidance from any executive, regardless of who they were. And that executive could not refuse it. Since it was established by the sex rules, everyone had to accept it. However, the problem was that the annihilating poison king Baek Saha was in a state where he couldn't meet anyone. That's why she had politely sought their understanding in front of everyone, including the society leader's disciples. She thought that Mok Jae-eun would no longer demand guidance, at least out of consideration for them. But that expectation was off. This child really. Was he lacking in tact? Or was he just stubborn? Whatever it was, it had become quite troublesome. If they made an exception for Mok Jae-eun to meet him due to the sex rules, what would happen to the potential successors? It could be described as a dilemma. In fact, Jang Nung-ak and Wai So-yeon were focusing on what answer she would give. If she tried to let only Mok Jae-eun in, citing the sex rules, there was an atmosphere that they would protest. Swish. At that moment, the second son Baek So-gang, who was standing next to Madame Jang, grabbed her sleeve and shook his head. Madame Jang let out a long sigh. There's no other way. She had tried to refuse and send them away on her own terms, but that seemed difficult. It might be better to experience it directly. Everyone followed Madame Jang and the second son Baek So-gang to the innermost part of the estate. Behind the main hall there was a shrine for the ancestors, and next to it a small detached building was located. When they arrived in front of this place, the second son Baek So-gang asked for their understanding. Please wait here for a moment. Baek So-gang entered the detached building. It took about half an hour after he went inside before he came out again. However, a faint steam-like substance was rising from his shoulders as he emerged. As they were wondering why. Swish. The second son Baek So-gang bowed his head several times towards everyone with a polite gesture and said, "Thank you for waiting. I have informed father about the young masters, the young lady, and the disciple of the Shadow Clan master who has come to seek guidance." "Did he say he would meet us?" Jang Nung-ik asked. The second son Baek So-gang made a troubled expression and soon opened his mouth. "He said he would meet you." "Oh. In that case I'll go first. But there is a condition." "What?" At Baek So-gang's words, Jang Nung-ik's voice rose slightly. He was already displeased, thinking that they could have met but were trying to send them away because of Mok Jae-eun. But now he was talking about a condition, and no matter how much he came to gain his support, it was difficult to hide his displeasure. On the other hand, "May I ask what the condition is?" Wai So-yeon calmly asked about it. She thought it was right for the one in need to comply in the current situation. At her question, Baek So-gang went into the detached building and brought something out again. It was a small table, and on it were a teapot and several teacups. "This is. If you can drink the tea we serve and dissolve it with your internal energy, or if we determine that you can endure it for more than an hour, you can enter." At his words, everyone couldn't hide their bewilderment. What was this about? What did it mean to drink the tea and endure it to enter? Then Wai So-yeon frowned her pretty brows and said, "Could it be that what's in the teapot is poison?" "That's right." "What?" At the second son Baek So-gang's answer, everyone stirred. They had been wondering what the condition was to enter and meet him, but this was completely unexpected. Who would have thought they would be offered a cup of poison? Jang Nung-ik spoke as if it was absurd. "Are you joking now? Drink the poison and endure it to enter? What kind of—" "I apologize. But if you can't do this, you might face a setback if you go inside." "A setback?" "That's right. Father, no, the family head said it was all right to tell you, so I'll reveal it. Currently, the inside of this detached building is filled with poison chi." At his words, Jang Nung-ik frowned and looked at the detached building. The inside was filled with poison chi? As he was puzzled, Madame Jang, the grand matriarch, spoke instead of the second son Baek So-gang. "The reason I sought your understanding was because of that. I did so because entering there might harm you instead." "Ha! Even within the family, at most only 4 people including this child can enter. The inside of the detached building is filled with such strong poison chi that even the Baek family members who have learned poison arts since childhood find it difficult to endure, so I had no choice but to seek your understanding." "Yet will you still enter?" At her words, Jang Nung-ik and Wai So-yeon hesitated for a moment. It was difficult to know why the inside was filled with poison chi or why the annihilating poison king Baek So-ha wasn't coming out from there. But based on what they were saying now, it seemed there would be no chance to meet him unless they went inside. Poison. The problem was simply the poison. Judging from what Madame Jang and the second son Baek So-gang were saying, it didn't seem to be ordinary poison chi. It was truly an absurd situation. Did they have to go this far to meet the annihilating poison king? Damn it. Jang Nung-ik shook his head back and forth. Irritation surged through him, but there was no other way in the current situation. If he gained the support of the annihilating poison king, he could definitely push Wai So-yeon out of the competition and even match his eldest martial brother to some extent. No matter how unpleasant and distasteful it was, there was no reason to hesitate. However, what was worrying was the poison of the Beck family. The poison arts of the Beck family, led by the annihilating poison king Beck Saha, were known to be among the top 3 in the Central Plains. He had heard that it was an extremely vicious poison art that was not easy to detoxify unless one was from the Sichuan Tang clan or the Guyang clan of the western regions. He wondered if he could easily endure it. Endure it for an hour. It might be difficult if he didn't protect his internal organs with internal energy from the beginning. Jang Nung-ak glanced at Wai So-yun. She also seemed to be hesitating, concerned about the same thing as him. Sigh. All right. If the conditions were the same for everyone, it was best to take the lead first. That way he could save some face. Jang Nung-ak, who had made up his mind, was about to step forward at that very moment. Sizzle. At that moment he saw someone already filling a cup in front of him. It was none other than Mok Jae-un. He had not expected him to suddenly take the lead. Meanwhile, the second son of the Beck family, Beck So-gang, spoke with a somewhat worried expression. Are you sure you'll be all right? This poison was no ordinary poison. It was a level that even skilled poison masters would find difficult to endure easily, as it was condensed from the poison chi inside the detached building and mixed with water. His internal energy level seems shallow if he drinks it carelessly and something happens before we can detoxify him. That was Beck So-gang's concern. Based on his spiritual perception, Mok Jae-un's internal energy level seemed to be at most at the initial stage of the peak realm. With this level of internal energy, there was a high probability that he would not be able to withstand the poison and would face a setback. Beck So-gang admonished in a whispered voice. Young Master Mok. To be honest, don't overdo it. With young Master Mok's current internal energy cultivation. Gulp. At that moment, Mok Jae-un downed the cup in one go. Oh my. Beck So-gang's expression became perplexed. He had tried to give him time to sufficiently raise his internal energy, but he just swallowed the extremely poisonous tea in one go? But what he said next was quite a sight. It's sweet. Chapter 143, Annihilating Poison King 4. What? Sweet. Beck So-gang, the second son of the outer master of the annihilating poison king Beck Saha, clicked his tongue inwardly as if it was absurd. Contrary to his appearance, the kid seemed to be full of bravado. This extreme poison was something that even skilled internal energy masters would find difficult to endure if they didn't purposely engage in breathing and energy circulation techniques. Let alone Mok Jae-un, who was merely at the early stage of the peak realm, he couldn't possibly withstand it. I need to prepare. The fortunate thing was that this was the Beck family's estate. They were prepared to detoxify him if necessary. At that moment someone approached. Is it enough to drink it and endure for an hour? It was Jang Nung-ak, the second disciple of the society leader. Since he had a reputation to uphold, he had wanted to be the first to drink the poisoned cup. However, Mok Jae-un had beaten him to it, and his mood seemed unpleasant judging from his expression. Pai Lord. Seo Hyein, the leader of the Grass Smoke Group and the fourth-ranked member of the Five Mountains Alliance, called out to him with a worried look. No matter how much he wanted to gain support, drinking the poison that only 4 people could endure even in the Beck family, where skilled poison masters gathered, was an extremely dangerous act. Swish. At that moment Ho Jong-hyuk, the Grand Clan leader of the Destruction Clan and the third-ranked member, shook his head. Shouldn't we stop him? This is too much no matter what. Are you going to insult our lord? Pardon. What do you think will happen to our lord's reputation if he backs down in front of other potential successors? At Ho Jong-hyuk's words, Seo Hyein closed her mouth. His words made sense. Although the condition was somewhat absurd, retreating in this situation would be equivalent to taking a step back in the competition for the successor position. At that moment, Wai So-yun, the third disciple of the society leader, also stepped forward and said, I will drink it too. She had also made up her mind. In fact, Wai So-yun possessed more extensive internal energy than anyone else, so she had some confidence. However, she had never directly swallowed poison and done such a thing before, so she had hesitated for a moment. I can't yield. From Wai So-yun's perspective, she absolutely needed the support of the annihilating poison king Beck Saha. That's why she couldn't back down like this. As she approached the table with the teapot containing the poison, she glanced at Mok Jae-un. Reckless. She had felt it from the first time she saw him, but this person was treading between boldness and recklessness. She had directly confirmed his internal energy level in the Corpse Blood Valley report. If it were an ordinary poison, he might be able to expel it from his body even with the internal energy of the initial stage of the peak realm if he continuously engaged in breathing and energy circulation techniques. However, the current poison was on a completely different level. It was an extreme poison created by the Beck family, one of the top 3 in the Central Plains when it came to poison arts. If one didn't possess supreme stage internal energy, it might be difficult to endure. Why is he going this far? He couldn't understand Mok Jaeongun at all. If he had obtained the first-place tokens from the Corpse Blood Valley entrance, he should have sought guidance from the 2 people who held the title of 8 stars, the supreme masters of the Central Plains among the 5 kings. But why the Annihilating Poison King of all people? What exactly does he want to learn? The Annihilating Poison King's main martial art was poison arts. It was a field that was completely different from ordinary martial artists, so even if he sought guidance there wouldn't be much gain. She couldn't understand why he was doing this. Is he an oddball? Anyway, it didn't matter. Now that things had turned out this way, she would be able to confirm Mok Jaeongun's true skills. Since her martial brother had mentioned that he was in the realm of the supreme stage, she would be able to see if he had really progressed that much in this short period. Gulp. At that moment, Jang Nung-ik swallowed the poison in the cup in one go. Since Mok Jaeongun had done it first, he couldn't show himself drinking it slowly. However, because it was an extreme poison, it was difficult to completely hide his expression. Ugh. Along with the burning pain in his lips, nausea and extreme disgust surged up. He felt like vomiting it out even if he had to retch. Damn it. They wanted him to eat this and endure for an hour? Rather than an hour, he had to first detoxify the poison that had entered his body. Even though he was protecting his esophagus and stomach walls with internal energy as soon as it entered, it still felt burning and he was even getting a headache. It was indeed worthy of being called the Beck family's extreme poison. I can't show it. Jang Nung-ik tried his best to manage his expression. His subordinates were also watching and he couldn't make a distorted face in front of that damn wench. Sigh. Next, Wai So-yeon also swallowed the poison in the cup. She didn't even want to taste it, so she wrapped her mouth and tongue with internal energy and swallowed the poison. Therefore, she could pay more attention to her expression compared to Jang Nung-ik. However, even though she protected her tongue, she couldn't help but frown at the stinging smell that passed through her throat and pierced her nose. Cough. Wai So-yeon, who had unknowingly coughed softly, turned her head with a reddened face. What kind of unsightly behavior was this? Coughing because of the nauseating smell. She felt somewhat embarrassed, but anyway she had to endure for an hour or quickly dissolve this extreme poison. Sizzle. Not long after, a purple vapor rose from Wai So-yeon's shoulders. She wasn't the only one. Jang Nung-ik, the second disciple of the society leader, also started to have purple vapor rising from his shoulders, although slightly later than Wai So-yeon. As expected, Wai So-yeon's subordinates showed a triumphant expression upon seeing this. Her profound internal energy was already famous within the Heaven and Earth Society. Damn that wench. Jang Nung-ik cursed Wai So-yeon inwardly. If it weren't for her bizarre constitution, she would never have caught the master's eye. At this rate, that wench might dissolve the poison first. Therefore, Jang Nung-ik focused even more on expelling the poison from his body. Whoosh. Perhaps because of that, the purple vapor above Jang Nung-ik's shoulders became even thicker. Madame Jang, the wife of the Annihilating Poison King Baek Saha, and Baek So-gang, the second son, couldn't help but admire this scene inwardly. That poison was an extreme poison close to the poison chi that filled the detached building. Being able to dissolve the poison that even the martial artists who had learned the Beck family's poison arts couldn't handle rashly was truly remarkable. It's not ordinary internal energy. They had heard that the society leader's disciples all had deep internal energy, and it seemed to be true. At this rate, it seemed they would be able to completely dissolve the extreme poison within half an hour, not even an hour. However, what's this? The second son Baek So-gang looked at Mok Jaeongun with a questioning gaze. Unlike the society leader's potential successors, Mok Jaeongun was just standing still. He thought he might be doing that because he was barely enduring it by raising his internal energy, but there was no sign of distress or anything on his face. Rather, he even seemed relaxed. Is he really enduring the poison? It didn't seem that way at all, no matter how he looked at it. Those two potential successors had not cultivated their internal energy as deeply, so enduring it would be their best option. But why was there no change in his expression at all? Wasn't he having any difficulty? It wasn't just him who had this question. What the hell is with this bastard? Jang Nungi also couldn't hide his bewilderment when he saw Mok Jae-eun standing still without even dissolving the poison. Why was he just standing there? This poison was so strong that if he didn't quickly dissolve it, it could not only strain his internal organs but also affect his brain. It should be dangerous, right? Why So-yeon also looked at Mok Jae-eun with concerned eyes. He was the one who had drunk the poisoned cup first. Yet the fact that he still wasn't raising his internal energy to dissolve the poison seemed extremely dangerous. Unable to stand it any longer, the second son Baek So-gang approached and spoke in a low voice. Young Master Mok, if you're having trouble expelling the poison chi, please say so. Trying too hard to pretend he was fine could lead to trouble. However, it's all right. But if there's no problem with drinking the poison, can't I just go in? At Mok Jae-eun's words, Baek So-gang's eyes narrowed. If there's no problem, he can just go in? Could it be that he was really fine even though he had drunk the poison and hadn't even expelled it? Young Master Mok, are you really all right? Yes, I'm fine. How could that be? Baek So-gang looked at Mok Jae-eun's face. Then his eyes soon turned into a gaze of incomprehension. That's because if he had been poisoned, there should have been changes in his lips and complexion first. But there were no such signs at all on Mok Jae-eun. What on earth was going on? He shouldn't have learned poison arts, so how could he be so unaffected after drinking the extreme poison? As he was utterly baffled, Mok Jae-eun said, "Can I go in? Young Master Mok, by any chance?" He wanted to ask if he could examine his body with internal energy. However, that was an act that completely deviated from martial etiquette even among members of the same Heaven and Earth Society. Therefore he couldn't bring himself to say those words. So, "Young Master Mok, may I verify something for a moment?" Verify. That's right. There was a way to examine the body with internal energy, but there was also another method. If Mok Jae-eun's saliva was dropped into a neutralizing liquid, they could determine whether he had been poisoned or not. Those who practiced poison arts always carried this with them. The second son Baek So-gang took out a small bottle the size of 2 fingers joined together from his waist and soaked a white handkerchief with the liquid. Then he said to Mok Jae-eun, "Please put your saliva on this." It's not difficult, but is there a need to verify? Pardon. The ingredients seem to be a combination of picrotoxin, aconitine, urushiol, blue softshell turtle intestine poison, jimsonweed, mandrake, white snakeroot, Carassius auratus, Aconitum carmicilii, red-striped scorpion venom, fire ant venom, poison dart frog venom, wasp venom, yohimbine, tetrodotoxin, and the yellow seeds of the oleander flower. Am I right? At Mok Jae-eun's words, the second son Baek So-gang's eyes widened as if they would pop out. For a moment he doubted his own ears. What the hell is this? He was so shocked that he was at a loss for words. The reason was that the extreme poison was created by condensing all the ingredients Mok Jae-eun had mentioned. The only ones who knew the main ingredients of this poison were the annihilating poison king Baek Saha and his sons. It was a combination of ingredients that were extremely difficult to obtain, and if the poison was condensed to this extent, it would be difficult for even skilled poison masters to identify even after a long analysis. This is unbelievable. It was so absurd that he wanted to deny it. Mok Jae-eun then said to him, "Did I miss anything?" At this question, the subordinates of the society leader's second disciple Jang Nung-ak and third disciple Wai So-yeon looked at him with disbelief. Was it possible to identify the ingredients after swallowing the poison as if guessing food ingredients? No matter what, this was too much. As they were thinking that, "You got everything right." A shocking answer came from Baek So-gang's mouth. He got it right? Did he just say he got it right? What is this? The subordinates of the two potential successors were all astir. Was it possible for someone who wasn't a skilled poison master or a pharmacist to correctly identify the ingredients of a poison right after ingesting it? They all had expressions of disbelief. Meanwhile, Madame Jang, who was also surprised by her son Baek So-gang's words, asked, "Young Master Mok, have you learned poison arts by any chance?" "How could that be? Then how did you know the ingredients of the poison?" I've been interested in medicinal herbs and poisonous plants since I was young, so I studied them. Studied? On your own? At this question, Mok Jae-un thought of his grandfather, but he had no reason to reveal that to them. And after coming out and experiencing the world, it seemed that some appropriate humility was necessary to a certain extent. So, how could I have learned it on my own? I received help from the physicians and pharmacists around me. Madame Jiang was dumbfounded by those words. It was difficult to fully believe this answer, but if Mok Jae-un was really this skilled in identifying poisonous plants or medicinal herbs due to his interest, he could be called a genius. It wasn't easy to differentiate the taste of medicinal herbs that were less harmful to the body, let alone poisons that were closer to pain than taste. Who the hell is this child? If his level of identifying poisons was this high, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was close to the young family head of the Baek family, no, the annihilating poison king Baek Saha. As they were amazed, Mok Jae-un spoke as if it was no big deal. If someone is interested in medicinal herbs or poisonous plants or has studied them, anyone can easily guess it. I don't understand why you're reacting like this.